Well, welcome back. We've been studying cellular reproduction, and there are particular types of cells that are in our bodies that are really different in terms of how they reproduce. And what I have pictured right here are, as you can see, there is a special kind of sex cell known as a sperm that's produced by males in mammals, and this larger one that the sperm are surrounding is referred to as an egg. Both of these are examples of what we're referring to here as gametes. And these are different in that they have half the number of chromosomes that body cells have. Have you ever really wondered how two very different siblings could be in the same family, having the same parents, and yet they're different in so many different ways? Well, we're going to begin to unravel that kind of puzzle here today. You see that you have body cells and gametes that we looked at just now. Body cells are also referred to as somatic cells. And the reason why we point out this difference has to do with the chromosomes that are in each. Germ cells that are found in your reproductive organs eventually develop into these gametes. They're sometimes referred to as germ-line cells. So these germ cells are located in females. They're going to be in ovaries, and in the males, they're in testes. And this is true in fish, in reptiles, and amphibians, and certainly in mammals, and in you and me. Gametes are sex cells, as I showed you before, the egg and the sperm. And gametes have DNA that can be passed on to offspring, which is very different from the setup that we see in somatic cells. For example, the body cells, you see muscle cells that are here. These are somatic cells. But the sperm cells and the egg cells, both of these are considered gametes. So there's a significant difference in how they're used. And again, it's going to lead back to that difference that we see in siblings. Okay? And there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in your body. And then there are the sex chromosomes. These are homologous pairs of chromosomes that have basically the same structure. Now, when I say basically the same structure, I want you to look down and look at the shoes that you're wearing right now. They're very similar in a lot of ways, aren't they? And yet they're not exactly identical. And that's what we mean by homologous. What we're saying is that these chromosomes are very closely related, and yet they're not exactly identical. In other words, you know that they go together, but they're not exactly the same thing. They're not copies of each other, but they are closely related, as we'll see. And so for each homologous pair, one chromosome is going to come from each parent, and that's what makes them so different, even though they have a related purpose. And so chromosome pairs 1 through 22 are considered autosomes. And then you have the sex chromosomes, the X and Y, that determine the gender that we find, particularly in mammals. And I have circled here the X and the Y chromosome out of the 23 pairs. And so body cells have a full set of these chromosomes, which are referred to as diploid. Gametes, on the other hand, are very different in that they're haploid. Haploid means half. Okay? They have 1/2 the genetic information that the diploid body cells have. And so when fertilization occurs between the sperm and the egg in sexual reproduction, there's going to be a joining together of those gametes. Diploid cells have 2 copies of every chromosome. And that's true of all your body cells. And so they are diploid. And half the chromosomes that you find in each of your cells come from each parent. Okay? So body cells here are diploid, and we use this reference 2N. Now, on the other hand, haploid cells have 1 copy of every chromosome. And this is true of all gametes. And so they're going to have 22 autosomes, not pairs, but 22 chromosomes, but only one sex chromosome. Again, these are each contributed by each parent in a couple. And so you'll notice the difference here. These sex cells are haploid. They have half the genetic information that we find in somatic cells. And so chromosome number must be maintained in animals. Humans, for example, always have 46 chromosomes. And every plant can have more than 2 copies of each chromosome, particularly, for example, asters, which can number chromosomes into the hundreds. And so mitosis and meiosis are types of nuclear division, different types of cells. Mitosis makes more diploid cells, as we see here. These are genetically identical cells, and they result in diploid cells. They take place throughout an organism's lifetime as this mitosis occurs. And these are involved in asexual reproduction. Now, on the other hand, meiosis makes haploid cells from diploid cells. Meiosis is going to occur in sex cells. And meiosis produces the gametes that we have just been mentioning. And these are not genetically identical, but they're genetically unique. And they result in haploid cells, meaning they have half the genetic information. And for most organisms, these are going to take place only at certain times in an organism's life cycle. And these are involved in sexual reproduction. Well, these are basically the differences between the type of reproduction we've looked at in your body cells and the kind of reproduction that we're going to investigate further in our sex organs. Listen, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.